My family just moved into a new house. We found a strange set of rules to follow. Part 5. The final part. Submitted by Luckyslin. I stood in shock, facing the creature. I watched it, and it watched me back, the same look I was so familiar with. A look of no soul, and many souls. The eye didn't move, it just stared at me. Interested in me. I was curious too, but not in a good way. Chills ran down my spine, and I didn't move. It was almost like I had forgotten how to move. This creature. This monster had a certain flair, something I had never experienced before. I was banned by its look. Then suddenly, the eye blinked, and in that very short glimpse, suddenly, everything came back to me. I realized where I was standing and what I was facing. Eventually, my fight or flight instinct kicked in. This thing was taller than me, almost reaching the kitchen light way up on the ceiling. And it definitely was stronger too, so it was the flight reflex that caused me to turn around, not knowing where I was going except away from the bodies in the freezer, the creature in the mirror, and also the monster that would haunt me in my dreams from now on. As I was running through the house, heading for the main door, I could hear it follow me. It made big steps, slightly shaking the floor. And that sound it made. It was a crazy mix. A mix of dread, despair, and devastating anger. Like 1,000 souls crying for help and hunting me like a wild animal in the same moment. I heard it catch up to me, my body was filled with adrenaline. When I finally reached the door, I pulled it open quickly and sort of fell out onto the ground. With my right foot, I kicked the door, and it closed. I stood up as fast as I could, prepared to run again. But it didn't seem to follow me. Apparently, the door was the edge of its universe, the growling and mix of sounds ended too. But I didn't want to enter the house again. I knew it was waiting for me. "Don't be afraid, Adam," a calm voice said behind me. I immediately turned around, now facing a man dressed in a suit made of black tweed and a long coat. He was wearing a hat too. The man looked like he was in his late 40s and he seemed so unnaturally calm and relaxed that I was confused for a moment. "Who are you?" I asked him as I got my mind together. "That does not matter, Adam," he responded. "Why do you know my name?" "I know a lot of things, Adam. Some people would even describe me as omniscient." He chuckled. "See, Adam, why don't you sit down with me?" He sat down on the curbstone by the street. I approached him a bit but didn't sit next to him. He was like the exact opposite of the creature hunting me. So nice, so calm, so polite. "Adam," he began talking again. "You see, the monster that is after you is equally afraid as you. They don't know what to do. They are captured and believe they will never be able to escape. And so they want more to be with them. To spend eternity together, to suffer together." "They?" I asked him, "Who is this thing?" The man smiled at me. "All of us. And none of us." "I don't understand," I replied. "You don't need to understand. There are a lot of things in this world that you don't understand. But you also don't have to be afraid. What is your biggest fear?" "Probably death." "Well, not death itself but the uncertainty that comes after it. And I understand you. Who knows what comes after death?" He gave me a thinking look, raising his eyebrow. Then he smiled again. Probably. But what does that have to do with this creature?" "Nothing. And everything. But..." I turned around to watch the house again. It was exactly how I left it. But what is the as I turned around again? The man was gone. No trace of him, nothing. I was confused as never before in my life, my mind was crashing. It was like one of those datamush memes, but it's not as fun if you experience it yourself. The burn in your brain, the stinging in both temples, and cold sweat covering your entire body. I knew I had to enter the house again, even though I didn't want to. But I had to get in there. I couldn't sleep on the street or wake up the neighbors. Besides of that, my parents would be back in a while, wondering how me and my brother were doing. My brother. I tore the door open again and had a quick look inside. No monster, just our usual house. I slowly went back inside, still anxious but also worrying about Jacob. As I came into the kitchen, there was still no sight of the glass I heard breaking before. It was perfectly silent and clean. I went up the stairs fast and opened the door of my brother's room. He was asleep. His sleep seemed pretty tight. I didn't want to bother him, so I went into my room to calm down. I closed the door and switched the light on. It were only a few steps to my bed, but I didn't make it. As I was halfway there, I heard the growling again. Now coming from directly behind me, just inches away. I knew what it was, and I also knew I couldn't escape, and the creature knew it too. It was standing right between me and the door. So I turned around. I felt like I could see a hint of satisfaction in its blank, pale eye that was watching me just like before. But before I could say something or even had the chance to make a move, the monster reached for me, grabbing my neck with the dead, half-rotten arms that were standing out of its torso. It choked me now. I tried to fight as best as I could, but I didn't stand a chance. It was just too strong. Then it threw me on my bed, letting me breathe for a second, like it wanted me to survive, at least for a moment. It crawled over me and continued to choke me, also grabbing my arms so I couldn't resist. At this moment I was sure I would die in this night. But somehow, I managed to loosen its grip around my neck. I remembered what the man out on the street had told me and bursted out a single sentence. "I understand you." My voice was low, I was out of breath and also didn't get an opportunity to catch it. The creature seemed even more furious now. It choked me even harder and let out a loud, demonic roar. The sound was deep, but I could comprehend what it was saying. Liar. How was it even able to speak? It had no mouth. Over and over again, the monster would yell liar at me, angry and whimpering at the same time while choking me harder as ever before. At this moment, I was entirely sure there was no hope left. But then, I heard the sound of the front door of our house open and the creature letting out a penetrating, deep screech. The last thing I heard before passing out. I woke up in a hospital. It was a fresh morning, and I witnessed birds chirp through the open window. Mom was sitting by my bed. I could tell she hadn't left me since I had been brought here. I felt relieved as never before in my life. I had not died, and that was the only thing that mattered. The next days went by pretty fast. The doctors were still concerned and had no way to explain my physical condition. Besides of the obvious marks on my neck, I also had frostbites all over my body. I didn't realize them myself until the doctors pointed it out and also had no way of explaining how I got them, except from the attack, but at that moment, I didn't feel anything. There are still a lot of things I think about in any free second. My experiences in the horror house, the monster itself. But also the strange, polite man I met on the street. I will be released from the hospital tomorrow, and one thing is sure, I won't go back into that house ever again. I also talked that out with my parents. I'll move to Zoe, back in my old hometown. As far as I know, Dad had already made plans to sell the house, and of course, he would leave a note of rules for the next owners.